Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming out on a cold, but it's great to be here. Today, I would like us to thank my colleagues and all those, especially in the group Do No Harm and Dr. Stanley Goldfarb, with whom we would not have made any significant progress in stopping the discriminatory acts and activist curricula that are now occurring in medical school these days. I come here today as a member of Congress, but even more importantly, I come here today as a surgeon of nearly 35 years, someone who has devoted his entire life, both here as well as abroad, in taking care of patients of a large minority of individuals who do not look like me. Physicians have always been held in a position of the highest trust. Patients trust their doctors with their lives. Medical schools are then charged with educating and training their doctors to be the most competent and excellent in their fields. In the past, students were admitted based upon merit, excellence, and aptitude. Sadly enough, those days are changing. DEI, the so-called diversity, equity, inclusion theology, is sowing mistrust in the field where trust is so reliant. And so when it comes down to patient care, DEI can even lead to harmful, if not deadly, consequences. Guys, this is medical school. It is not art school. It is not English school. It is medical school. As Dr. Ben Carson, whom you all know, the Black neurosurgeon, said about medical school, putting aside merit instead of emphasizing qualities like race, sex, religion, and all others. By putting aside merit, we hear only that can endlessly cost people their lives. When in medical school many years ago, I took the Hippocratic Oath, primum non nocere, first do no harm. I was taught to take care of any patient, regardless of their race, ability to pay, their religion, or their creed. I was taught to do the same with my colleagues, to treat them with respect, collegiality. Sadly, as is evidenced by the handouts that you all were given, those days are changing. Close to 40 years ago, when I was in college, I worked my butt off. I was awarded the Sandy Black Pre-Medical Award as the highest pre-medical student at Davidson College. Now, because of my race, my gender, and maybe even my religion, my odds of getting into medical school are now greatly diminished. Prescription pads and scalpels are now being weaponized. In some places, students across this nation are forced to sign a DEI fealty pledge, reminiscent of those days in 1930s Germany, as well as Russia. What would Martin Luther King say today? In his great quote, "I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of that character." That content is what we call merit. What has happened to that dream? Today, the Educate Act will cut off federal funding to medical schools that force students or faculty to adopt certain beliefs, discriminate based on race or ethnicity, or have diversity, equity, and inclusion offices or any functional equivalent. The bill would also require accreditation agencies to check that their standards don't push these practices while still allowing instruction about health issues tied to race or collecting data for statistics. It's my honor today to introduce Dr. Stanley Goldfarb. Dr. Goldfarb is the chairman of Do No Harm. He's had a long career in academic medicine as a professor of medicine at Pennsylvania State School of Medicine. He has published over 100 scholarly articles in peer-reviewed medical journals, such as the New England Journal of Medicine and the Journal of Clinical Investigation. Dr. Goldfarb helped found Do No Harm after his publication of the book, Take 2 Aspirin and Call Me by My Pronouns, a call to action to eliminate all discriminatory practices in healthcare. With that, I'd like to introduce my friend and my colleague, Dr. Goldfarb.
Well, thank you very much, Congressman Murphy, for your leadership and your vision about this issue. As he said, my name is Stanley Goldfarb. I'm a board-certified nephrologist, former associate dean of curriculum at University of Pennsylvania's Perelman School of Medicine, and chair of Do No Harm. My message today is simple. DEI is dangerous everywhere, but it's most dangerous in medical school. I've had a front row seat to the corruption of medical education. Precious classroom and clinical time is now devoted to such issues as climate change, homelessness, policing, and other social issues that doctors cannot change. The ideologues behind this trend don't want a doctor, they want lobbyists in white coats. The Association of American Medical Colleges, which effectively controls medical education, now forces medical schools to teach intersectionality, oppression, colonization, and white supremacy, among other core DEI topics. One medical student recently told my organization, "I've learned more about pronouns than I have about kidney disease." And that patient and patients should be terrified about this kind of miseducation. Medical schools routinely demand that faculty and staff sign DEI loyalty oaths. This is the essence of compelled speech. Medical schools are lowering admission standards in the name of diversity too. Some have abandoned requiring the MCAT for all applicants, even though the MCAT, the achievement test for medical school, is the best predictor of a student's ability to become a doctor. And medical schools openly discriminate by race. Our organization has found numerous medical scholarships and fellowships that bar white and Asian students from applying. Nationwide, schools are even dividing students into race-based classes and groups. Medical students deserve better. Most of all, patients deserve better. They need doctors who will treat their illnesses and cure their diseases, not discriminate by race and advocate for divisive political demands. DEI puts Americans' lives at risk. The best way to save lives is to get DEI out of medicine now. The Educate bill sponsored by Congressman Murphy is a great step forward in treating and eventually curing the ills of medical education in this nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Goldfarb, for your leadership. Next, I would like to introduce one of my dearest friends here in Congress, Dr. Brad Wenstrup. He's serves the people of Ohio's 2nd Congressional District. He brings experience both forward as a physician, Army Reserve officer in Iraq. He's a podiatric surgeon from Cincinnati, and I would like to introduce him for his comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Murphy, and thank you all for being here today. You know, as physicians and as lawmakers, we have a responsibility to have oversight on the education in the United States of America at all levels. And in this case, when we talk about medicine, that includes the medical school and residency training. See, so much of that is funded by Congress, by taxpayer dollars. So we have a responsibility here. And we are all for a path for opportunity for people that traditionally, with their backgrounds, their family background, may not have an opportunity or think they don't have an opportunity to achieve a lot, to go into medicine. Talk to Dr. Ben Carson about that sometime. And we can instill that in a young age. For me, I knew in 2nd grade that I wanted to be a physician. And I knew that it was going to be an effort. It was going to take sacrifice. It was going to take work. That it wasn't just going to be given to me, that I had to earn it. And so I wanted to that's why I'm for school choice, because I want people at a young age to have an opportunity to go to a school that will help them, gear them up to accomplish their dreams. But, you know, 60 years ago, and for the last 60 years, we worked very hard. Dr. Murphy referenced Dr. Martin Luther King. We worked very hard to make sure that in this country there was equal opportunity, and that we were against discrimination, and it was not to be legal. You know, I looked up the word equity, quality of being fair or impartial. But the idea of being ruled in, or in some cases ruled out, based on attributes that have nothing to do with trying to create someone who can be a caring, compassionate, and competent caregiver is not impartial. It is partial. It is not fair. It is unfair. In fact, it is blatant discrimination. You know, I speak from the heart here today. I practiced in private practice, large orthopedic group for 27 years. I served 25 years in military medicine with a year in Iraq. I had a lot of patients that didn't look like me, but there was trust. I had a lot of doctors refer to me that didn't look like me. I had a lot of doctors that I referred to that didn't look like me. We had strong doctor-patient relationship no matter what we looked like. We had strong doctor-to-doctor relationship no matter what we looked like. There was trust because we knew that everyone there had adhered to some high standards that had to be met. Now we want people to take an oath against racism. Are we going to take an oath against domestic violence? Are we going to take an oath against hatred? Why don't we just stick with what we have, and that is an oath to do no harm. And the very idea that you love your neighbor as yourself and you're going to do unto others as you would have done unto you. We have a shortage in medicine today. I encourage all people to want to participate in a merit-based system that can give us the best patient outcomes. Medicine is a noble profession. It requires sacrifice, leading to the reward of being able to care for others and being entrusted by patients to do so. And it must be earned and not given. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wenstrup. Now I have the honor of introducing Dr. Tibia Lee. She's the founding member of Free Black Thought and has contributed to the design, implementation of numerous educational and professional development programs. Dr. Lee prepares K through 12 and higher education faculty to work with diverse communities by focusing on a better understanding of ideology in practice and the pedagogical and curricular implications of race, gender, and other ideologies. Dr. Lee, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Tabia Lee. I'm a senior fellow for Do No Harm Medicine, a founding member of Free Black Thought, and the director for the Coalition for Empowered Education. I come to you today as a lifelong educator and former DEI faculty director in the California Community College system, who has up close and personal experience with toxic critical social justice DEI overtaking institutions of learning. I'm thankful to Dr. Murphy and his work on the Educate Act, which is not and I want to point out that I support this act. I'm neither a Republican or a Democrat, but I have the good sense to know that the idea that present and future discrimination is a remedy for past discrimination is not only contrary to American law and the Constitution, but it's dangerously anti-American at its core. Thank you to Representatives Wenstrup and Murphy for having the moral courage and clarity to help bring our medical schools back from the brink. No matter what side of the aisle you sit on, something we can all rally around is that it's important for us to educate, not indoctrinate. And that means getting race-based mandates out and critical social justice DEI practices out of our educational institutions, and removing federal funding for those who continue the harmful and illegal practices that are wrought in these critical social justice ideologies. You don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat to oppose discrimination of all kinds, including anti-white discrimination that is fomented by critical social justice ideologies. Toxic critical social justice DEI has no place in medical education. We need medical professionals who meet the highest standards of competent care and professional competency, not for how well they signal fidelity to a toxic DEI policy and ideology. For those of us on both sides or no sides of the aisle who love America and want to see a return to education instead of indoctrination, the Educate Act is a breath of fresh air and a hopeful promise to restore learning and teaching as a focal point instead of partisan political activism, division, discrimination, and anti-American critical social justice DEI. Thank you for joining in this effort and for supporting the Educate Act.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. Next, I'd like to introduce another good friend, Dr. Marinette Miller-Meeks. Dr. Miller-Meeks is an ophthalmologist. She's on the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, as well as the Health Subcommittee on Veterans Affairs. Thank you all. Dr. Meeks.
Thank you all for joining us, and thank you both, Dr. Murphy and Dr. Wenstrup, for introducing this important legislation, rightly called the EDUCATE Act. For too long, we have watched as radicals inside the institutions of higher learning have pushed diversity, equity, and inclusion ideals and other harmful agendas over quality education. Let me just take a brief moment, and I'm going to give you my background. I'm the fourth of 8 children. My dad was career Air Force enlisted. My mom had a GED. Both my parents worked my entire life. I thought, as a young lady, because I was good in science and math and I loved school, which was a refuge for me, that I would go into education. And at 15, I suffered severe burns from a kitchen fire, and during that very long and painful hospitalization, decided I wanted to become a physician. Not because of the physician, but because of the physical therapist who treated us. I came home, told my parents this, so we were very humble circumstances. No one in my family had ever gone to college, and they didn't see how a poor young lady with no one in the family ever having gone to college was going to be able to do it. I left home at 16. I got a job. I enlisted in the Army at age 18, decided if I went into nursing, I'd be able to work myself to medical school, and that is exactly what I did. I worked, got a degree in nursing. I worked at night, got a master's in education, and ultimately went into medical school, graduating at the top of my class, despite being the last person to enter into my class. That was all based on merit. And we are now talking about policies that will take away the explosion of knowledge in healthcare, in medicine, in research, and replace that with thought, where a person who would come to my office to see any one of us as providers wouldn't think, am I going to be treated fairly? Do they have the knowledge to treat me, to diagnose me? Or are they going to treat me based upon my race or my ethnicity? The EDUCATE Act would prohibit federal funding from graduate medical schools who direct, compel, or incentivize students, faculty, or staff of the medical school to personally recite or affirm compelled DEI statements and pledges just for the simple admittance into the school. Our pledge is to our profession, to the medical knowledge and foundation we have, and to our patients. Let's get back to training the future medical professionals away from radical policies that, despite their names, divide and exclude. Let's make sure that every medical student has the knowledge they need with the vast explosion of research and information in medicine, so they can treat any patient that walks into their door, regardless of their race, their ethnicity, their gender, or where they are from. Again, I'd like to thank Dr. Murphy for his leadership on this critical issue and encourage all of my colleagues, both Republican and Democrat, to support this legislation and demand accountability in higher education. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meeks. Next, I'd like to introduce Representative Burgess Owens. Everybody knows Burgess, good football player, I heard. From Utah's 4th Congressional District, who was one of the first 4 black athletes recruited to play football at University of Miami. Somehow he ended up in the NFL and went there for several years and did a fantastic job. He wears a little ring that might say that. Mr. Burgess now serves on the House Education and Workforce Committee, where he is now subcommittee chair of higher education. Mr. Burgess brings a big dream today in following the guiding principles of faith, family, free markets, and education. I would like you to welcome my dear friend, Mr. Burgess.
Thank you. First of all, it appears I'm the first to speak that's not a physician. But I do have a physician in my family. My son-in-law is a emergency doctor, one of the best. I met him when he was in residency. He worked hard, top of his class, went on for years and worked very hard hours, long hours, becoming the best at what he does, and now runs his own business. Based on DEI, because Chris doesn't look like me. He's a different color. He might not have the opportunities he has today. DEI promotes people and policies based on race, gender, religion, and sexual orientation, rather than merit, talent, and hard work. This is not the American dream. This divisive force is gripping American universities and now in our medical schools, influencing policies and missions with a very corrosive ideology. Recent studies show that at least 70% of the 155 accredited university medical schools provide mandatory or voluntary CRT-related coursework for students. Unlike the courses like organic chemistry and physics, this Marxist orthodoxy does nothing to teach medical students the inner workings of the human body. DEI instead mandates discrimination as it lowers the standards and quality of physicians and undermines the health care of all patients. Of all the industries that depends on the promotion of only the best, regardless of race, creed, or color, the medical profession is a gold standard. Your life, your health, your loved one's life, their health depends on compassionate, capable, and talented physicians. Bigotry is not embraced in any segment of our society. As Americans, we disdain it. There are results that are very predictable when it comes to the bigotry called DEI. It is not a matter of if, but when and how many lives will be lost if we do not eradicate this from our medical system. Please join us in defending academic freedom, protecting American exceptionalism, and rejecting this ideology of bigotry and extremists called DEI. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Owens. Next, I'd like to introduce Kenny Zhu. Kenny is a friend of mine back. We share an alma mater at Davidson College. And Kenny was born to Chinese immigrants in Maryland. He moved to North Carolina, attended Davidson College. Kenny did a great job when he was at Davidson in free speech. We really needed it at the college at that time. And Kenny started when he graduated Color Us United, which is based in North Carolina. Color Us United advocates for a race-blind society and equal treatment of individuals. Thank you, Kenny, for joining us today.
Thank you, Representative Murphy. Greg and I are both North Carolinian residents, so I'd like to start off with an example from North Carolina. Just 2 weeks ago, Duke Medical School surgeon Dr. Vignesh Raman was caught on video saying that he does not like treating patients from, quote, the South, and that he would rather, and he said, my heart burns, my heart is sick when he treats white patients. As a reminder, Dr. Wenstrup here, Congressman Wenstrup, said that as a doctor, his responsibility is to treat people irrespective of their color, gender, religion, or any background. Does this sound like somebody who will treat somebody regardless of color, religion, or background? As a reminder, DEI is strictly based on the critical race theory ideology that America is systemically a racist country, that white people are racist, and in order to combat that, we have to be racist against white people and against Southerners and against conservatives. As a member of a Southern state and a conservative state, the fact that medical schools treat people and leverage people's education to indulge them in critical race theory-based woke philosophy based on DEI really scares me. Really scares me. It really scares our constituents, our Southern constituents, our white constituents, and anybody who calls themselves American should subscribe to the American ideal that we should be treating people based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. This Educate Act is a great start towards that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think a common theme is we all want our medical schools and our physicians to be diverse. I believe that strengthens us, but when you do it at the expense of merit, when you do it at the expense of excellence, when you add discrimination into the entire process, you are destroying what is, I believe, the most trustworthy profession in all professions. So thank you. We're happy to take any questions. You can direct them to whoever you wish. I think we need to create a bigger pie. I don't think we need to eliminate. We have a severe doctor shortage right now. This is by wrong policies that were occurred 30 years ago. decrease the number of medical schools, decrease the number of residencies. I am absolutely, we absolutely want to as many individuals, regardless of age, to apply to medical school, work hard, become doctors. But students can't believe that they will be able to get into medical schools merely because of identity politics. Being a physician is hard work. It requires sacrifice. It requires understanding and digesting a great group of knowledge. We need those individuals, but the class can be bigger. We can take everybody.
Can I add to that? I think it's important that we even start at a young age with education. It's important we start at a young age with education in America. You know, a friend of mine, he was the principal at an inner city school where there were probably not one child there whose parents went to college. My parents didn't go to college. But I was at a school where it was instilled in you that you can do whatever you think you want to set out to do and provide that type of an education. That's why I'm for school choice. But what he did at this school is he started putting up banners of colleges to put it in their heads that, yes, you can do this. This is something that you can accomplish. And we don't do that well enough, I don't think, in the United States of America today. So it's all of it. And it's not just medicine. It's whatever you might dream you want to be able to do. You don't necessarily grow up thinking you have that opportunity. But today I have had a parent call me and say, my son has top MCAT scores. He's done everything well in school. He's got a high GPA. He wants to be a physician. He's worried he won't get in because he's white. That's what is taking place out there. And they're not just making it up. It's because they're seeing it happen to their friends as they're going through. We can't have this. We can't have this. And as Dr. Murphy said, we got to expand the pie. We have a workforce shortage. We need to get out and make sure anybody at any age knows. We'll just take medicine as an example. Yes, you can.
Can I say something?
Yeah, please do. Please do. Please do.
I want to ask, what's the percentage of, say, white physicians currently now? Do you know the
56% are white, approximately 22% are Asian, and then it balances out between Hispanics and African Americans.
5.7 African Americans.
Mhm.
So what do you say about the African Americans that right now it's not on an equal playing field, that are trying to become a position where there's a disproportionate gap between African Americans that are trying to become?
Yeah, answer is simple. Teach them like everybody else and all the other kids have been taught. Let's not start off with the premise that blacks do not have the intellectual ability to meet the high bar. I finished up in University of Miami with a biology and chemistry degree. It was almost impossible for people to believe blacks would do that back in the 60s because they thought so little of the black intellect. So let's get rid of this idea that we cannot perform. Give them the right opportunity to learn. Also do that. Parents will put their kids in the best schools so they can go ahead and learn how to read, write, and think, and compete with anybody else in the world. We do not think with our skin. We think with our brains and our hearts and the ability to dream big. So we have to get back to that.
So my father-in-law is a physician, right? So it shocks me that a man of that you would say that when you look at the percentage of 5.7% black and brown students are physicians, and so it's disproportionate.
Well,
We don't even have a chance. I
yeah.
served 550 low-income first-generation scholars.
Yep.
Scholars. Every last one of them have the opportunity and the potential to be physicians, but unfortunately, they don't have the chance because a lot of times they're turned around just because of the color of their skin. It's not that they don't have the merit.
Can I answer that? What would you say to this then? In 2017, found out that 75% of black boys in the state of California cannot read and write. You know, now it was because 75% of black boys cannot think or because we're not taught. That should be the concern. If you're not teaching them how to read and write when they're younger, they're not going to be physicians. Physicians, this kind of profession needs to have the very best. You don't want to go to see somebody just because of skin color. When you want to be healed, you want to live. We need to make sure that we're not lowering the bar because we have such a low thought process of black Americans. Raise the bar that everybody can get that in, let everybody have the opportunity to grow and think and succeed.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
By the way, when I grew up in Tallahassee, segregated community, my first exposure to white Americans was 16 years old. I had black physicians everywhere. Everywhere.
I know a lot of them.
Okay, so no, but the difference is this. The difference is this. When I was growing up, we also led the country in the growth middle class, men matriculating from college, men committed to marriage, percentage of entrepreneurs. We were succeeding as a society because we believed in ourselves. We had people around us. Once we start believing in our kids, they will start failing. So let's get this education thing taken care of, and you'll find that 5% will go to 50%, or whatever it might be. Anybody wants to be there. What's that?
I said I run a preparatory program. So our program is preparing these young scholars to be whatever they want to be.
Great.
But the issue is providing an equal playing field for them to have the opportunity. That's all.
Can I say this?
That's what we're saying. That's what we're
we're saying
saying.
the same thing. And I have
What we've all said today.
my son-in-law is a physician. The last thing that anybody cared about when he was going through the process is what his skin color was. Is what his grades were, how much compassion he had, how much he can get through the process and become the best of what he was. Everybody should have the same opportunity. So let's get away from the skin color deal, okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
Yes to all of those. And I will say sometimes, you know, on the other side of the aisle than I am because of the pressure that, excuse me, is exerted by the other side. They're withheld a little bit from speaking their comments. But I will tell you, I spoke with the now ranking member of an aid committee, and I told him we were doing this, and he was 100% agreeing with me. Democrat member. You know, guys, if it just imagine you are the patient. Imagine you are the patient and you're looking up and tomorrow you're having your chest cut open because you're going to have bypass. Who do you want as your doctor? Someone who is skillful or someone who got into medical school because of identity politics? We want to broaden the pie. We want the physician population to mirror what we have in the country, but we cannot sacrifice merit. We cannot sacrifice quality to do such. I would hope so. I would love so. Because, you know, I think if you ask everybody and you did this in an anonymous manner, there would be overwhelming support for this. We're not talking about art school. We're not talking about English school. We're talking, for God's sakes, we're talking about medical school where people's lives are at risk.
Sometimes you have a compromise that can be made on this issue. Maybe you can water down some of what's in there and bring some new changes.
Like what? Like what?
Well, maybe like, you know, changing some of the parts of DI you don't like, but still being
So,
open to programs that will level the playing field.
well, I love to say diversity. We are diversifying naturally in this country. We're a melting pot that's occurring naturally. But when, especially on college campuses, diversity means everything except diversity in opinion. I found that back in my alma mater. We're talking about free speech. We talk about inclusion now. Inclusion is wonderful. We want everybody to join. But all of a sudden, we're now excluding in the effort to include. Yeah, I'd love to have a full discussion on this. And sometimes you have to take a shot across the bow to bring the argument up. Yeah, it's a hard argument. It's a hard discussion to take. But guys, again, we're talking about people's lives here. People's lives. And imagine if it was your child, your mother, your wife, your spouse. Think about that. What do you want from your physician? You want excellence. Okay, guys.